This is talking about the new U.S. dollar that is rumored, and I'll put the emphasis on rumored, that be coming out within about 18 months. I don't know if this is exactly the timetable because I kind of go back to my old postulate. A lot of people are selling something. Now, in the case of Brother Nathaniel, I think he's a very good source for information. Brother Nathaniel Kapner. He used to be Jewish, and he's an Orthodox minister right now. So, and I'm not saying anything against Jews here or anything, and I don't think he does. I think he gives more pinpoint, justifiable criticism in the right areas versus a broad-based smearing tactic or anything like that. But he's talking about the new dollar is underway. This is according to Bob Chapman of the international forecaster fame. Banking professionals and middle-sized banks apparently leaked to Chapman that I have to laugh here because I know there is a lot of people that follow Bob Chapman. I think there's a few people, probably think maybe more like I am, that he's particularly a salesman throwing out a particular line. So I always wonder how banking professionals of middle-sized banks apparently leaked to Chapman. He got all this inside information, and that's the only guy. But anyway, that the Fed leaked to Chapman that the Fed was told that the banks to clear safe storage as they're getting ready to print a new currency. And I guess it's the new currency, this thing right here, this blue. And you're showing Ron Paul versus Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan. Anyway, Chapman told his readers that the prices are being oiled to roll out a new dollar. It looks like a cheap euro because the Fed expects the euro's new dollar to no longer be the reserve currency in another 18 months. Key financial experts from around the globe are putting in their 2 cents, which is what the new dollar will be ultimately worth. I don't think it's going to go down that far. That's not a literal translation, because if that was the case, gold would be $90,000 an ounce. And I don't think it's going to change that much. And remember what I said about the elite and their power base. Yeah, they are looking to screw people over, I'd imagine, if you want to put it that way. But there's usually so far they can go, because what happens is they actually ruin it for themselves, and I think they're very well aware of that. Beginning with the pros at the Silver Doctors, a question was posed that if the new dollar is true, then Big Swears wrote the Rhoda story of a gold standard is dead wrong, that the Fed has put out the information Bix used as a decoy. Now, to me, this is a lot of gossip and stuff like that. I don't like this type of stuff, but I'm just bringing it out because I think there's too many rumors out there and it's steering people way wrong. It depends on whether the new dollar is devalued. Fiat dollar are backed by gold. The Fed would not divulge beforehand because the sheeple would dump their dollars for hard assets like gold and silver to avoid the devaluation, which is the entire purpose of the new dollar. Now, I don't know. Big Swear was focusing on a new $100 bill, and I know they're probably coming out with a new $100 bill, and they were forecasting that from before. Not talking about these guys, but I knew this because that's the most counterfeited money in the world, the $100 bill, more than anything. And that's why a lot of times people don't even like accepting $100 bills. They like doing it the 20s and the 50s. That's something to keep in mind if you keep some cash on hand. Don't keep hundreds. You're better off doing it the 20s and 50s, mainly the 50s. It's this. I don't trust any of these guys, to tell you the truth, and that's why I'm making this, because I don't know. I've seen too many predictions by Bob Chapman that don't come true, and he's a good talker. Big Swear, I know he gives you a lot of facts about silver and stuff. And I know this says lots of Jews here, because I'll just kind of cover that up. But anyway, Big Swear was saying that the good guy group is Alan Greenspan, Paul Volcker, which I can agree with, Michael Murkowski, Dianne Feinstein, don't agree with that, Barney Frank, don't agree with that, Warren Buffett, So then he has Ron Paul in here, but I'm. It makes you wonder what Big Swear is even about, because some of the people he puts in here as the good guys, I wouldn't consider them the good guys at all. There's another guy they mentioned in here, Benjamin Fulford, and he also champions the good guys theory, saying that the White Hats of the Pentagon and a 59-nation group called the Red Dragon Society would soon pull us out of the global financial matrix of impending destruction. I'm going to tell you right now, all these guys, in my opinion, except for his brother Nathaniel, are full of it. They are selling to the and I don't want to even knock that there's a conspiracy, because I just don't like using that word. But they are selling to a specific audience, and that's most of what they're doing. These people are just as bad as any attorney, doctor, or any kind of professional big bucks BS that is out there, except they're selling to another crowd. I think there is some truth to this dollar being revalued, and maybe a new currency coming out. They've been talking about it for a while, and it's probably true what Lindsey Williams says about the dollar losing its reserve currency status. But I could see that from other angles, not because I'm just paying attention to Lindsey Williams. This is a given. This is a given. They've been talking about it for a while. The timetable, maybe it won't be 2012 that the dollar will lose its reserve currency. What I think will happen, obviously, is QE3. So QE3, and actually you can put money into a lot of different areas. It could be silver, it could be the palladium like I was saying, but any commodity. It could be fuel, I mean physical fuel, diesel fuel. It could be food. That'll go up. Why not buy food, right? Actually, food is more important than silver and palladium. That's quite obvious, So I gotta point out a couple of things about this, because his brother Nathaniel, he's a good guy. He gives you some good information and stuff like that. I don't quite agree with him on everything, but he's legit. I trust him. I personally don't. Like, Bob Chapman's got some good advice, but he is slick. That's the way I look at him. He's very slick. He's a very good salesman, and he's selling to a certain audience right now. Benjamin Fulford, I don't buy into any of his stuff. If there was these ninja dragons out there and they were going to knock out the Illuminati, they would have already done it. They wouldn't be playing games. And if they were going to do that, they'd be the power. They would be the elite. They'd be the new elite that people would be dealing with. They're not going to, this is a game. This guy's a game. I don't know about Big Swear. He gives a lot of good information about silver, but, he's another one too. I mean, they all are. And that's really the facts behind the scenes. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this Occupy Wall Street in this respect. And this is straight off of Investopedia. It's posted 2003, July. And this is before the 2008, downturn, economic downturn. Talking about the Glass-Steagall Act, right? The Glass-Steagall Act is, there's more to blame in the repeal of this act that was done in 1999. There's more problems that was created by this than the Federal Reserve. They're talking about end the Fed, end the Fed. You know what? I know there's truth in that, but you know what? They need to go back to square one with this all the way, not partially, all the way. But what I keep thinking is, where was Occupy Wall Street in 1999? I knew about this. It was pissing me off. Be telling anybody, hey, what's for lunch? That's usually a reaction you get. What's for lunch? So in 1933, and this is an excellent article. I'll post this link. Remember, though, that this was posted in 2003. This isn't after 2008. So, they didn't know what was going to be coming up as a result of repealing this act. So in 1933, in the wake of the 1929 stock market crash and during the national commercial bank failure and the Great Depression, Two members of Congress put their name on what is known as the Glass-Steagall Act. I'm going to kind of skip around on this a little bit, not to read the whole thing. At the time, improper banking activity, or what was considered overzealous commercial bank involvement in stock market investment, was deemed the main culprit of the financial crash. According to that reasoning, commercial banks took on too much risk with depositors' money. Obviously, that's what happened in the 30s. Reasons for the act: commercial speculation. Commercial banks were accused of being too speculative in the pre-depression era, not only because they were investing their assets, but also because they were buying new issues for resale to the public. Thus, banks became greedy, taking on huge risk in the hopes of even bigger rewards. And that even sounds, you got to apply this to yourself too, as an individual and the silver crowd. I'm not going to knock silver, but I personally don't like being in one area. And I am pretty heavy in one area, and I am pretty heavy in the physical precious metals. But I don't like being in one area. Even if I had a crystal ball and I knew for a fact, I would go in one area and on one area 100%. But banks became greedy, taking on new risks in the hope of even bigger rewards. Banking itself became sloppy and objectives became blurred. Unsound loans were issued to companies in which the bank had invested, and clients would be encouraged to invest in those same stocks. Sounds familiar, right? Sounds familiar. Now, this is the one I want to really point out to you because, everybody thinks the elite are the worst guys in the world because they're elite. That's not true. Senator Carter Glass, a former Treasury Secretary and the founder of the U.S. Federal Reserve, was the primary force behind the Glass-Steagall Act. So the founder of the Federal Reserve was the primary force behind fixing a lot of things. So sometimes a lot of these people might have really good intentions in their mind, and there's a lot of things going on. It's not even like one person that's actually doing an evil deed or whatever that's going on. It's everybody's acting in their own self-interest. That's what's going on, in short. So as a collective reaction to one of the worst financial crises at the time, the Glass-Steagall Act set up a regulatory firewall between commercial and investment bank activities, both of which were curbed and controlled. Banks were given a year to decide on what they would specialize in, commercial or investment banking. Only 10% of the commercial bank's total income could stem from securities. However, an exception was allowed commercial banks to underwrite government-issued bonds. And there's a racket right there. Financial giants at the time, such as J.P. Morgan and Company, talking in the 1930s, were seen as part of the problem. Were directly targeted and forced to cut their services, and hence a major source of their income. Man. The Glass-Steagall Act, however, was considered harsh by most in the financial community, and it was reported that even Glass himself moved to repeal the Glass-Steagall Act shortly after it was passed, claiming it was an overreaction to the crisis. So obviously this guy knew what was going on, knew how to fix it. It's Senator Glass. He was the founder of the Federal Reserve System. Probably had some good intentions in his mind, but people around him must have put a lot of pressure on him to make him reconsider his erroneous move in putting this act together. So that seems very typical. So a lot of times when you're seeing a guy that's ahead of the Federal Reserve, he might not be the worst guy in the world. That's why I look at even Alan Greenspan. I mean, what's he going to do? Right? He knows what's up. What's he going to do? I mean, how can you change things? There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that are pressuring the people in the positions to act in a certain way. Many argued that allowing banks to diversify this is when they repealed it, right? Many argued that allowing banks to diversify in moderation offers the banking industry the potential to reduce risk, so the restrictions of the Glass-Steagall Act could actually have an adverse effect, making the banking industry riskier rather than safer. Furthermore, big banks in the post-Enron market were likely to be more transparent, lessening the possibility of assuming too much risk or masking unsound investment decisions. As such, reputation has come to mean everything in today's market, and that could be enough to motivate banks to regulate themselves. So, they're making the argument that since Enron got caught and slammed, the banks are going to be good now because they're scared. That's quite funny. Consequently, to the delight of many in the banking industry, not everybody, but most people in the banking industry, in November of 1999, Congress repealed the Glass-Steagall Act with the establishment of the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, which eliminated the GSA restrictions against affiliations between commercial and investment banks. Furthermore, the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act allowed banking institutions to provide a broad range of services, including underwriting and other dealing activities. So, this is when people should have been awake. And not to say anything about Bill Clinton, but that was during his administration, and I knew about this, and I knew that was a bad deal. But it takes a long time for things to actually have their effect. But people in Occupy Wall Street, I think, are being played. So, maybe some people were like, 15 years old or 12 years old when this in 1999. I don't know. I was older, so I'm well aware of what was going on for a long period of time. But, I told people stuff, and they're like, hey, what's for lunch? Whatever, some other BS, Did you hear about the latest movie? That kind of garbage. So I knew about this stuff for many, 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 many years, and I knew kind of like what was going to come about to it. So, but I think what's going on here with a lot of these things, a lot of these clowns are playing to the audience, and super salesman Bob Chapman, and Ben Fulford, and I did see his interview with David Rockefeller. To me, that doesn't mean anything. He's trying to show that as proof that he's on the inside. I don't believe that crap. You know what? I could throw crap out here and say I'm on the inside. I'm a regular person. I'm an average person. And, I've seen certain things that average people never saw. But, big deal. I'm not trying to play anything. I'm just trying to give you the straight scoop that go with the some of the more traditional things that are out there, because I think these guys they're all a bunch of yellow journalism. This guy, he's pretty good. Brother John excuse me. I'm thinking of somebody else. Brother Nathaniel Kapner. He's a good guy, and he does have some good information out here. He's very highly critical of Jews, and he was Jewish himself at one time. So, I'm not really that critical of Jews. I know it's a mixed bag. And I know they're very good in business, and that sometimes it pisses people off, but they're good. What the hell can I tell you, right? I'm going to make some other comment about this thing about the elite are waiting for. They're going to drive the price of silver down even more, and I think Lindsey Williams was talking about this, and I think what he said there was pretty hokey. The reason being is the elite got too much damn money to just buy some silver coins. You take all the silver coins in the world, right? There's 100 million available in a year, that yearly production. That's considered nobody buys them in the whole globe. You got $3.3 billion they can throw in there at $33 an ounce. That's like an average person buying some pennies and saying they're safe. They got their wealth secured. They'll probably go more into gold than silver. And they're not going to buy this. And just to take the argument that, they're going to wait for silver to go to $25, then they're going to buy it all up. Where are you going to buy it from? Everybody's going to buy it up. This 101 million ounces isn't going to be available, and that's going to be about $2.6 million. And that's the whole global supply for a year that's available for coins. They're not trying to buy this stuff up. That's ludicrous. That's crazy. So it's very, very, very tough to manage huge sums of money, because they get caught up in the same kind of emotions. They got greed. They could be in the wrong markets. You know, they could be in a bubble or something at themselves in some area for a number of years, have a lot of confidence, and all of a sudden that breaks, and then they're SOL. So you know, so I think a lot of times the elite are dealing with the same kind of problems that are going on a average person, and except it's infinitely many times worse because, yeah, they are scared. They're scared of losing money. That's what they're scared of. They're scared of losing money. If you had, $500 million, what the hell would you do? What would you do? You got to be looking at, you can't be just looking at precious metals. That might be a good portion of it. But you got to be looking at things that are generating money on an ongoing basis. So that's a lot of times they get into buying properties and buying buildings. And, they got renters in the buildings. And, how long is, to look at all these things, what the history was, what the tax rates are, what the maintenance costs are, and how much they're looking to protect their wealth. So, they just can't put it in silver. It's not even an option. That's like an average person buying pennies. It's not going to happen. And if the pennies got cheaper, that means even less of their money is even going to be protected. So the pullbacks in silver are coming from the euro. That's what's going on right now. So I personally don't expect them to keep going with the pullbacks in silver too much longer. And QE3 is going to have to be coming on. There's one other thing I want to point out. This is kind of relating to this Occupy Wall Street, because I think they're playing into the hands of certain people. This was Major Anatoly Golitsyn. He was a KGB major and defected in 1961. For many decades, this guy made a lot of good predictions. And you talk about, he didn't do this because he knew what the elite told him anything. He just did it because he analyzed the situation and knew what they did in the past and what they were planning to do when he left the KGB. But, he left the KGB, defected in 1961. He's writing books in 1995, over 30 years later, and he's still making accurate predictions. And it's not because somebody in the KGB is telling him what's going on. It's because he analyzed the situation. And I think that's a very, very, very important point to consider. But they're talking about when he was in, when it was a former Soviet Union, he says there was going to be restructuring taking place, and that's the Russian Federation. The same type of, if you look at Putin, he's going up for another election. That guy's going to be in power longer than any dictator ever was. And he's former KGB himself. But he says that Russia is actually counting on total economic collapse in the West. That's when they're going to move more aggressively. So I'd be very careful about doing anything against your own country or your own government or even the established elite, other than getting pinpoint on exact activities that they're doing wrong. But not to go against it in general. They predict that Americans will begin to fight each other. Now, that I could definitely see during a collapse. That could possibly be. And the plan is for them, in conjunction with the Western elite, is to introduce communism with a human face. In other words, capitalism doesn't work. And you can see they're playing that game left and right. So, that's one reason I look at Lindsey Williams' predictions, and I think he's pretty accurate. But I go by more with the way this guy thinks. You got to verify everything. Verify everything there is, and not just take, people's word for it. Because I think this guy's playing to the crowd. Chapman, he's really out there in conspiracy land all the way. Big Square's got a lot of good silver facts, but I don't know. Big deal. I know the facts too. So be careful. And the other thing I really wanted to point out was, I think everybody on the top is the bad guys. Not necessarily. Here in effect, you got Senator Carter Glass, who was the founder of the Federal Reserve System, was the primary force behind the Glass-Steagall Act, and that did fix a lot of things that were wrong, that where J.P. Morgan itself was seen as a major part of the problem, and he put a clamp down on many things. So you're talking, that could be Paul Volcker. That could be Paul Volcker. That could be the Paul Volcker, would be today. So, be careful and just getting a blank criticism like end the Fed, because this isn't going to happen right away. You got to do one thing at a time, and there should have been a hell of a lot more against this repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act that occurred back in 1999. But most people were looking at the stock market and everything was great, so who cares, right? That's 99% of the problem.